Welcome to the show, Liora. I'm happy we were able to get this on the calendar. So this is a real treat for us to have you with us today. So thank you, first off, for
Thank
being on.
you. Thank you, Darren. I'm very happy to be here.
When we do the show, the hope is to get to the authentic self. The hope is to learn how you go through self-reflection, how you're empathetic, and then most importantly, how do we talk about data? So I really like to start with this empathetic sense so the audience and myself can get to know you. I always feel like when I listen to podcasts and they get right into like the data models and I don't know the person, I feel like I'm not that connected. So thanks for being part of the show. And a couple questions, right? Is what city are you sitting in? Well, here's my rapid fire. What city are you sitting in? Did you relocate there during COVID? And how the heck did you survive self-isolation?
That's a great question. So today I'm located in New York, in Brooklyn, to be honest. I've been here for a year and a half already, meaning we've relocated with my family to the United States a year and a half ago. It was like 5 months before COVID started. We came from Israel. We relocated for my work. We had so many hopes. I brought a husband and 2 kids, started our new life in the very big city. And then COVID hits. And no one expected that. That was insane. So we're new. Luckily for us, at least, English was not an issue. So it's not a complete different, experience, cultural experience. But still, we hardly know people. Everything is so new. Bureaucracy is insane. And then, we go home, we start, we don't see anyone. We don't have any opportunities to make friends, to create a good network here. We're practically on our own. And to top that off, we cannot fly home because everyone is on lockdown. You cannot go home, to visit your parents. I was really concerned. My parents, are relatively older. And if anything happens to them, I'm really far away. So that was pretty tough. And being in New York at the beginning of COVID, oh my God, that was an insane experience. We didn't know what was going on. So being alone in New York, 5 months after relocation, that was a life-changing experience, I can say.
I do not have kids, but there's always a joke that I hear parents say is that there's no book on how to parent. There is no book. So can you walk me through how you sold your kids, hey, we're going to New York, we're going to go, you're going to meet new friends, and then
boom.
What was that like at the dinner table when the kids were like, you promised me new friends, you promised me all of this, and these things are out of our control. I mean, I can imagine what that was like. Could share that story. It's an awful story, but you made it through it. But
it's very tough, and it's not only new friends. So my kids are not very young. They're already teenagers. They have a mind of their own. They know what they want. So it was not only friends, it was like I was trying to seduce them with, we'll go to Disneyland, we'll do this, we'll do that. America is so cool. We'll be able to do, all the cool things that you like. We'll do Comic-Con, we'll fly to San Diego, like so many cool things that, teenagers may like. And then, nothing happens. And then we tried to find the good things about being here. And to be honest, there were a few good things. So in New York, even though it was so horrible, we were almost never under a real lockdown where you cannot go out of your house, which is something that did happen back home. So I was able to sell that to them. We were able to go and have a lot of nature hikes and nature walks and get that fresh air, once the weather permitted. And that was something that, back home was not allowed. So I was able to sell them that. The other nice thing that we were able to do when, it was already a little bit better, we started doing all sorts of like summer sports and winter sports, new things. So we really try to do any new thing that we can while we're here so that this is not an awful experience.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the pandemic has something that we all have shared experiences with globally. Doesn't matter your age, your race, your sex. I think we've all had to find our place. And when I look back on it, I've done a lot of self-reflection. I've talked about this on my show. I've got back into journaling. I was part of the exodus from San Francisco to Miami during COVID. Like the lockdown hit me pretty hard. There's loneliness in a way that we're just not built to stay inside. That's just not where we are. And I did the move, and I understand what you're saying about moving to a new city. I'm vaccinated 2 shots, and it's nice to see things are opening up. And thanks for starting that way. Now, I think there's some other interesting things about your path that I want to dig into in the sense that lots here. Relocating is a big deal. remote work, working from anywhere is different than relocating. I don't think they're the same word. They're similar, right? Because relocating, your company is saying, if you want this job, this is the city you need to live in. This is where the team is. Remote work anywhere, emotionally feels different, not as heavy. You're one of the few that also did that.
Both. I did both in the
Correct.
same year. Exactly.
Correct. So I'd love to have you talk about it, and maybe even talk about what it's like to do it at a small company versus a big company, less resources, more resources. There's a lot here. You pick it up wherever you want to go, but this is an interesting conversation because I think a lot of people have forgotten about what relocation is because of remote work is in front of us right now.
So it's a very good point. And when you're relocating, you may get to the sense that, you feel a little bit alone, out of your element. For me, coming into an American office in a big company was getting used to so many new things, how people behave, what you say and what you don't say. How do you motivate an American team versus, how do you motivate people back home, which was much more natural for me. I knew how to give that speech so that everyone will really work hard and do those things. We were all serving in the Israeli army. We were all knew, what is coming together to one task is. So relocating, had its cultural shock. And when we topped it off with working from home, then I think everyone got that sense of being alone, being secluded, being in a new environment. So I think that I actually had some kind of an advantage over everyone because I already did that like 5 months ago. The thing that I tried to do when work from home started was to give people a sense of togetherness, of you're not alone in this. And I work in a big company and people there's not a lot of effort being done on the social aspect of work. So people used to come to the office, do their work, go home, sometimes maybe like go out for drinks, but it wasn't very social. The thing that I tried to do, at least during the first weeks and months of COVID, was to give the people the sense of, you're together, we're together in this, do social activities, get much more engaged with their well-being. Some of the employees were really, really alone, like their parents are thousands of miles away. They didn't have a family like I had. I think that I was really able to empathize with them because I just did that. I just felt like you do. So I think I had the tools to really feel for them and connect with them. And I hope that made a difference for them. As time moved, we all got used to it. We actually started liking it. And we're now talking about going back to the office. Nobody's planning on doing like a 5 days back at the office. We don't want that. We're already used to the nice things about working at home. But as a manager of a group that at least some of it is localized to the city, I am planning on coming back for at least 2 days in the office. And the thing that I want to do during those 2 days is have that togetherness feeling again. So it can be planning meetings around new projects that we have. It can be hackathons that, we are all together in one room eating pizzas and, storming new ideas and getting a new product out. But it can also be completely social stuff like let's go bowling together. Let's, take a lunch in the city together. Like really get that sense of we are a part of something that makes us feel good.
What I like about your thinking is my belief, that empathetic managers are going to win. And the fact that you're leading a team, you are an adult, and you're thinking about the at work experience a lot different than others. The come back to work for these 2 days. If you want to code at home, I'm sure you can do a very good job coding at home. Yes. You're happy there, you could do it. But when you're in the office, we're not trying to manufacture serendipity, but we're going to just do team building here. We're going to do other things. And I think, I don't know what the answer is, but as we get closer to the back to work, I think this is like a great topic for roundtable discussions, just like how are the big people doing? How the big companies, small companies, we don't know. But I also think the way you're thinking about it aligns with this, from my research on you, is getting to where you are with not the traditional path, right? So the traditional path would be come back to work. Like there's your desk, get the work done. So I'd love for you to talk and tell the audience about your career, the non-traditional way of where you got here. You're at one of the most iconic brands, running a big team.
Yeah.
You didn't get there the way most.
No, I didn't. That
So
is definitely correct. So
tell us about that.
So I started my career when I grew up. I'm already not very young, and when I grew up, computers were not very common, but I was very lucky to have a father in the IT industry. He actually had his own computers development company, and I grew up with computer, which was rare for people my age. And being a sort of like a, daddy's girl, I always knew I wanted to, do something with computers. And my natural path after finishing high school was to start a software programming course as part of my Army service, actually. And I did that very successfully, and I became a very successful software developer, and also was promoted to manage software developer teams and had quite a good time, but I always felt like I was missing something and I didn't know what. It's like, yeah, it's a nice profession, but I'm not sure it's, the last stop for me. And then I did some research and I decided to pursue an academic career. So I thought, maybe get some more intellectual stimulus. I started studying my BSc in neuroscience, which is like fundamental question of how does the brain work? That really excited me, and I really, really wanted to get into it. And I always thought, computer science is really tapping into that questions, because we're fundamentally trying to mimic that. How does the brain work? How does the brain learn languages? How do little kids, learn everything? How do they accumulate knowledge? How do we do things and try to build better computer softwares with that knowledge? So that turn in my career actually led me to complete a PhD in biological research of very small molecular area of how does the brain work. So we started with a very big question, and as you pursue your academic path, you actually narrow down your path to very specific questions that you become an expert in, which is a little bit funny if you think about it. And the more I came to the end of my PhD, the more I knew that I really, really wanted to go back to the computers industry and to have the knowledge that I have accumulated help me in pursuing, my passion in how do computers understand language, how do we learn, and to try to build better software with that knowledge. So I was really lucky to, on one hand, have a good domain expertise with software development, software engineering, and on the other hand, have a very good academic training at one of the finest Israeli institutes, the Weizmann Institute for Science, on how you do research. And when you take those two skills or two domains and you put them together, the very result would end up being data science. So on the one hand, I had a very big passion for the data. On the other hand, I had a very good training on how to do science, how to ask the questions, how to handle research, how to create a hypothesis, be very, very, careful when you're reviewing that and when you're controlling your experiments, and how to come up with the conclusions of, what are the results of your experiment and how it can be implemented in the real world. So I think it was really interesting to do these turns around my career path just to end up in the place where I feel that I belong, where I have both that technological challenge and fun, because I really like, coding and tech. And on the other hand, that academic challenge, these questions that I can pursue, these hypotheses that I can put out there to the world, to prove my points and to make my contribution.
Something in there that I want to spend a little bit more time on. Women in tech, STEM. You were fortunate to have a parent that understood technologies and you had early access. The generation that's coming up, they understand swipe left, swipe right, apps. Daughters of our listeners, advice you'd give them. It's not really the cool thing right now to code, or maybe it is for some. Women coming up into STEM, because I think you can bring a different point of view, because you can bring international view right? And now you're a little bit seeing the America's view. So what advice would you give parents?
That's not only it's a good question, it's also one of my passions to mentor and support more women into the technological domain. And we've had a lot of debates around it, how to do it. The thought that we had was that the intervention needs to be at a very early age. So we start with elementary schools, but where the pivot really needs to happen is around middle school. So during elementary school, the level of interest of girls and versus boys in science and technology, I wouldn't say it's the same, but it's almost the same. And somewhere around middle schools, there is a shift in the interest of girls. Some of it is really, really, narrated by society, where they're sort of abandoning science, abandoning tech, and going towards more of the soft skills types of interest. Some of them would be, clothes, makeup, blah, blah, but also when they need to choose what their strong sides or what are the things that they're going to take interest in, a lot of the time, they don't even take the time to look at their options in science and tech. And this is where I think the strongest intervention need to take place, because if during middle school we can shape that group of girls who is very talented, but are too shy, are too self-conscious, they think that's for boys only, they don't want to be surrounded with boys. If we can shape that and create that strong group, they will go to high school and do their scientific work and their tech work, and then they will do that in college or in the army or in any other tech domain, and then they will come to the market. So when we try to influence students, why are you not taking on computer science, we understood that it's already buried in the roots of their education and their self-image. And middle school is really, really the place to, I wouldn't say push, but encourage them, create specialized groups for girls who tech. And there are a lot of those. And I have actually been volunteering in those. Take those 12 years old girls and show them how cool it is to code. Create those apps. You want to do beauty apps? Cool, do the beauty app. I don't care. As long as they see what is the value of, going into that domain.
I've spent time asking that question to other women in tech thought leaders. And of all the answers I was given, I appreciate you really nailing in a time period, because I've yet to hear that. Everyone has graciously given their time. They've mentored their advocates, they help, but you're the first I've spoken that said, boy, like there is this moment here, like critical, 11 to 14.
Critical window.
Like I've yet to hear that. Yeah. So my follow-up question, and I've asked this to other guests, but I'm going to ask this question, and I don't know the answer, and I think every answer can be correct. And this is it a blessing or a curse? All right. So I'm going to ask the question, and then I'll tell you why I think about it. So the question is, kids, male, female, who at those younger ages know they want to be a doctor, they want to be a veterinarian, they want to be an architect, they want to be a lawyer. Is that a blessing or a curse? Because for me, it feels like a curse. There are so many things to do in this world. But then there's sometimes I'm jealous because maybe it's a blessing, because there are people that just knew what they wanted to do. They're like, I've always wanted to be a doctor and I'm a doctor. So kind of in this zone of, you also, I don't know if you knew exactly where you wanted to be. So what are just your thoughts when people are like, this is what I want to be? Is that a blessing or a curse, or is it both? I don't know. It's just something I think about.
I'll tell you what I think about it. I think it's a personality trait. And some people are very, very determined, and they just know what they want to do. And exploring is not going to give them a lot of value, because they actually have that both gut feeling and also rational understanding of what they want to do. And some people are the complete opposite, and they keep exploring well into their 40s, 50s, and they always explore. And I think it has to do with your personality. And I feel that I am both. So on the one hand, I was telling you about computers and how natural it was for me to dive into the computers. On the other hand, I was always exploring. I was always looking into, okay, so now I want to do neuroscience. Now I'm doing biology. Now I'm doing data science. I'm doing natural language processing. I don't know where I'm going to be 5 years from now.
Right.
I don't know.
When I get into those places where I'm getting into a very curious place, and I always like to think of a curious person is never surprised if you're genuinely curious. But in this curiosity journey, that's when I kind of look over the fence and I'm like, well, it would be nice to know I always wanted to be a doctor because I'm on this journey. I know I'm going to go somewhere, but in the midst of that journey, I kind of always say, yeah, boy, if I was just wanted to be a doctor,
the interesting thing, I think, is the changing of the workplace and the future of work. So with our parents, they started a job, maybe at a factory, at a company, whatever. They were working there for 30, 40 years, and then they retired, and that was it. With my generation, it's like Generation X. So we're already, hopping between companies, doing like these 4 or 5 years in every company, changing the roles a little bit, blah, blah, blah. The next generations, when I look at their CVs, they're doing like 18 months, boom, 18 months, boom. And at first, when I was looking at it, it's like, what is this instability? But then, I changed my state of mind and I understand, no, this is how things are done today. It's much more short term. People are looking for their own selfish value, but also companies are using that, changing the workforce to fit their needs, which is, it's fine. It's changing. I'm looking at my kids' future. So work from home, YouTubers, gamers, like these professions that, never existed before. How you make profit by being a digital vagabond, by, putting on some things on YouTube. Their future of works looks very, very different from my, present of work.
And
so what I wanted just to say was that, it doesn't matter if I wanted to be a doctor. It really matters, how they're going to think for their future and how that's going to play out for them.
Well, I was going to add, and we didn't get to it, and I want to have you back, is you've now unlocked the world as your, real estate. Where do I want to live? Like now you don't have to live because if this is the digital vagabond, if this is that new world where you can work in this environment, bosses understand it, where just the feeling of 5 more days till vacation, 4 more days to vacation. Can't wait. Oh, I'll tell you. And then when you get back, oh, I wish I was back. Like now you're just like, I'm living my best self. Like and it's just, I'm getting
Move to Miami.
Yeah. And I'm absolutely my best self in the inside, not in the outside world, but you're right. I've been able to be in that spot.
During the pandemic, data science became really cool. So everyone became a data scientist. They're now analyzing the curves, talking about coefficients and things that, like no one understood what I was doing earlier. And now like everyone's a data scientist. So I think that everyone has realized the value of taking raw data, which is, very hard to understand, and then analyzing it, visualizing it, and really getting the conclusions that affect the world. Now everyone is, waiting for these daily graphs and talking about the rise in the curves, etc. So this is why I do think that we have a good moment to talk about data as a world, a world treasure or something that needs to be explored by everyone and exploited by everyone. I also think that machine learning used to be something that very, unique people used to do. You had to have a PhD in statistics, blah, blah, blah. And today it's not that way. So everyone can actually apply machine learning algorithms to their kitchen recipes in order to, predict, what's going to be the best recipe for dinner tomorrow. And that's also something that can be added to the fact that it's not a very rare profession. Everyone should engage with it. It should be very, very easy to do. And everyone should talk about it. It's very cool.
And I know based on things that we just talked about, do you think it's data day? Do you think it's ML day? Because in that 5-year vision, it'd be cool.
It's not this and not that. We'll need to find a much more compelling name. And I'm not a good creative mind on that, not on English anyway. So we'll need to find a better name. But it's definitely something that needs to be engaged to the population. Not engaged. The word is to make accessible. Make it accessible to everyone. And we did it with science. So we had Science Week, for example, back in Israel. Every year we had Science Week where you had lectures to kids and to the wide audience, lectures in the bars where people were drinking and hearing about science. And, you bring the cool stuff. Yeah, you don't bring the boring stuff. But there's so much cool stuff happening both in data and in science and data science. And we were really, really putting it out there for people to understand science is cool. And, it really connects with what we're talking about, girls who should go to tech. Yeah, data science is cool. It's not just these geeks, math geeks that are doing it. It's actually, you can, affect the medicine, you can affect sports, you can work in Disney and do data science, and you can work in, the NBA and do data science. You don't need to be like a data geek. And this is why I do think that we need to do something like that. And there are a lot of like smaller initiatives, but it can grow and become something.
It's a movement, right? It's a 5-year place for the movement. And these things just pop up. Like, we don't know, but it'd be great to be that
think about the pandemic as a real boost to that, because really, like, everyone knows what data science is today. Everyone's looking at the visualizations. They understand what is like an exponential curve. Who knew what that is like, a year ago?
No, I like it. I like that. I was thinking today, Science Week, I'm going to look that up. So great advice. You heard it here first. It's going to be something. It's going to be something, and we are going to figure it out. So this is
I'd love to give my, my talk in a bar where people can drink, and I'll talk about ML. Pretty cool.
This was a great conversation. There are a few other women in tech thought leaders that I've met through the show, and I hope that's okay if I connect you with them, because there's such an importance of that. And I think that's, but yeah, the reason why is you're the first, I really narrowed that down. So there's a few people I want to connect you with. So this was a great time with you. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Yeah, we're sponsored by Pandio. We thank them for all their support. When I get to New York, we're going to have a coffee or something.
Of course.
I hope it'll be good to meet a new friend. All right. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Darren.